Okay, welcome back. This is going to be the last video in this series on changing over the airplane to a tail wheel configuration. So this video is going to be all about getting the axle brackets on the gear legs aligned and everything, get the axles on there, get them leveled, get everything welded up and bolted in place. So I'll start out by talking about what I use for references. Using my laser, so you can see my Fat Max laser there. And first thing I started with was finding the center line of the airplane. So you can see I marked on the firewall. Up here I'm 40 inches wide, so this is at 20. Down here I'm 36 inches wide, so I'm at 18. And then underneath the airplane I took some measurements. Make sure it was going right down the center. Back here I'm going right through the tail wheel bolt. So you can see I am about as close to center as I can get on my digital protractor. I've got the plane leveled that way, and it should still be level that way. Yep, 0.1's close enough. So what I did was, actually I've removed it already. I used clamps to kind of hold these brackets in place, and actually I don't know if you can see it, I actually added about 2 inches, welded 2 inches on top. So first thing I did was measured out same distance on both sides. It was 42 inches and came up with new reference marks. So there's one here and there's one over there, and that's very close to where this flat area is going to be. I put something flat on there. You can see I'm pretty much aimed. Now I've only got one bolt in here right now, and I'm going to loosen this up and show you that with only one bolt in there, I can rotate this back and forth and change this alignment this direction. So basically toe in, toe out. So I'm pretty close, probably within a degree or two, but I'm going to finalize it here in a few minutes and get it exactly lined up with these reference points on the floor. So I'm just going to clamp on a straight piece of probably aluminum tubing that I've got. I'll make sure it's straight so that it comes out here. I'll use this to make sure I get it all lined up, and then I'll be ready to drill the rest of my holes. After that, it's going to be time to do something with the axles. And over here, I think I had said in an earlier video that I had bought Harley axles, and that's these axles right here. And I'll show you what I did. I actually put the old axle in a lathe and drilled a 1/2 inch hole. They were 5/8, so I just drilled a 1/2 inch hole in the back. My Harley axles, I cut down, put a 1/2 inch nipple on the end of the axle, and now this will slide in here so I can weld it. It's a kind of an interference fit. So my plan is to bolt this on. I'll use my digital protractor to get it level, and I'm going to worry about the final toe in, toe out with shims. It's probably not going to need much, but I'm going to do, like I said, shims for the toe in, toe out. So that's kind of what the axles look like. The Harley axles on there, the same length as the other ones. And hoping to get that accomplished today, and then I'm going to start making my torque plates for my Grove calipers and get the wheels on there and start putting on brake lines and So anyway, let me go ahead and get this going. I'll show you the final product here for today, and then we'll move on to getting the axles leveled and everything. Alright, so I've got the gear bracket loose. I'll get some light on here. Okay, so got one bolt holding this on, and there's my reference line. You can see as I move this back and forth how this tube, which I've checked for straightness already, moves in reference to that line. So this is kind of the final adjustment before I make my last or drill the holes. Hopefully this camera will stay. Alright. Looks like that's parallel with that line. So right there. Yeah, I'm a little off. That looks like that's it. So I'll drill my holes. I'll go over and do the same thing on the other side. And from here on out, when we go to bolt this axle up to here, we'll just have to, well, I'll just film that. I'll show you how I'm going to make it level and shim it. So that'll be next. Okay, so I've had to kind of reevaluate how I'm doing this. I went ahead and made my torque plate. I haven't put the 4130 tubes in it for the brake calipers, but I've got it bolted on there. So that gives me a reference as to the angle. Here, I'll show you. So this is the bracket that's going to be my torque plate. And you can see this bracket here has been made. I can't change the angle of it, so if I try to bring the axle up to level, then the wheel is going to be about 5 degrees off from this plate, and things aren't going to move correctly. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to shim this plate until the torque plate is straight up and down. So there'll have to be some shims added up here. So what I've done, I've taken a reading on the torque plate. Gives me basically 84.5, which is 5.5 degrees off of 90. So then I put my axle in there, and I actually used what was left of the old Harley axle to set the axle angle at 5.5. So now at least up and down I'm straight with this plate back here. So when I shim this whole thing backwards, or put shims up here to bring this up 5.5 degrees, everything will still be square. So at this point, I'm going to get out my welder and tack that in place. Now I still don't have the toe in, toe out adjustment. So I'm gonna do something here to figure out how to get that as close as possible. It's not going to be perfect. I'll worry about making fine adjustments later with shims, but at least now I've got a sense of where the shims have to go and what has to be squared up with what. So anyway, once I get this tacked and I figure out how I'm going to do the toe in, toe out measurements, I'll come back and show you that. Okay, so I've got this thing figured out. So what I did, I've got it tacked, and we should have 5.5 degrees on here. Yeah, I got 5.2. You know what, I probably, as I weld it, it's gonna move a little bit anyway. I'm gonna say that's good enough. And then for the fore aft, I used my reference line down the center of the airplane, measured out 55 inches, came up with a new reference line. So that is square with the airplane. And now if I put this square up here like that and hold it up against the axle, you can see I am so close. I can't measure that much, that little bit of error there. So shims, if there's any error at all when I do the final adjustments, the shims will take care of it. So at this point, it's weld that axle on the plate, bolt everything up, and move on to the other side. So that's what I'm going to do. Just a quick update. I'm waiting for some fiberglass to dry last night, so now I can show you what I've been doing. Alright, so the dilemma was the gear comes down at 50 degrees. The bracket here was made at 45 degrees. So I had a 5-degree difference, and I had to figure out how to take that out. So what I came up with was create a wedge. I used a piece of 1/4-inch aluminum solid rod. It's right at the top of the bracket here, and it's all glassed in. Now, the only mistake I made was I should have painted this this gear strut with mold release before I did all this, because now I want to take this off and look at the back of it and make sure I don't have any voids. I want to kind of fill in. So on the other side, I'll use the mold release so I can pop this off. So I'm in the process of taking these bolts out, holding it on, get this thing off. I'll clean up the back side, clean up all this extra fiberglass, and that 5-degree wedge that I created puts this at 0 degrees and fixes basically all my issues with alignment. Fore and aft will still be done with shims. So anyway, just wanted to give you an update. We'll come back and look at this when I've got it more put together. Okay, I'm back. Just got this off. Actually, mold release didn't make any difference. It popped right off. This is super smooth, so I think that's the reason it didn't really... It stuck hard, but it didn't stick that hard. So I've got a nice wedge here. No voids. There's my piece of aluminum rod. I'm just going to clean this up, and it's going right back on. So anyway, that's how you get rid of the 5-degree difference. Unless you make this after the fact and make it exactly for your gear legs. So anyway, I'll give you an update as soon as I get farther along. Okay, just going to wrap up this video. I'm going to show you most of what's done on the left gear. have not started on the right gear. But so we're got about 0 degrees on our protractor, so the plane's level. I put the gear bracket back on with the large wedge shim I needed to make. It's in there. I've got my torque plate for the brakes almost completed, and I've got the thing spaced pretty much the way it's going to go on there. I'm using washers right now, but I'll make some spacers. I also put the last hole right here in the top of this section I added, so that I have 4 bolts holding the bracket on the gear. So the proof is, well, first let's check this. 49.9, and down here I'm at 1 degree. So I guess I'm going to live with that for now. I may shim it later, or I may just leave it alone. Now I'll put the wheel on so you can see what it's going to look like. You can see I'm missing the gear leg by about 1/4 inch. My torque plate still needs some trimming. You can see it's got to go on the inside of the brake disc. I could go with a larger brake disc, but I think this will be fine. So there's going to have to be a spacer on that axle, and I've got plenty of, I probably got 1 inch or 1.5 inches of play. So everything will fit. That's what it's going to look like. Those are 4x6 tires. Really gets the plane up off the ground. I like them. So anyway, that'll kind of finish up my series on changing this gear over. Hope somebody finds this helpful. It's a lot of work to get everything lined up correctly and in the right orientation, and I've had to make a couple changes as I go, but I think I've got it. Alright, well, thanks for watching my videos. Success with your gear. So I just got the KR leveled up, and I'm just amazed at how tall this thing is. Hope I didn't go too much. I'll show you. I'm going to take some measurements, and this week out at the KR gathering I'll check some other airplanes that look kind of tall and see how they compare. But I've got the thing leveled up. I've got the tail wheel about where it's going to go. It's maybe a little bit high. My new wheel's coming today, so once I get that on there I'll know for sure. But my prop spinner is actually going to end up at about chest level, probably right about out here. Just looks much taller than what I started with. Give you a couple different angles here. Now I've got 20 inches, about 20 inches from maybe 19 3/4. And then the protractor showing the plane sitting at about 8.5 degrees nose up. And I think I got the panel before, but that's the new panel. I now put my switch for the dive brake right here, so that while I'm holding onto the throttle I can move the dive brake. So anyway, that will that'll kind of wrap this up. It's going to be a beast.